Let me tell you about a case I've been following closely for the last little while. It's between Greenpeace and a Canadian company called Resolute Forest Products. It's a bit complicated, but it's also quite fascinating. Resolute Forest Products is a rare example of a Canadian resource company showing a spine when it comes to the shakedown attempts by environmental groups like Greenpeace to smear their operations and activities with misleading propaganda, and sometimes even outright lies. Let me give you a quick primer of the case. Greenpeace spent years attacking Resolute Forest Products for, quote, destroying the forest. That's the exact word Greenpeace used. Greenpeace began even approaching the clients of Resolute and began encouraging them to find other paper suppliers because, again, they were, quote, destroying forests. Well, last year Resolute had had enough and decided to sue Greenpeace in a U.S. district court in Georgia under racketeering laws, as Resolute felt Greenpeace's attacks amounted to criminal activity. But this battle between Resolute and Greenpeace actually goes back a bit further. In 2013, Resolute was able to garner a public apology from Greenpeace after they falsely accused Resolute for cutting down trees in an area they had previously promised not to. Also that year, Resolute sued Greenpeace in Ontario court. Well, yesterday the CEO of Resolute Forest Products, Richard Garneau, penned a beautiful full-page op-ed in National Review, punching back hard at the false accusations made by Greenpeace. The op-ed is fantastic. I highly recommend you read it, because I've never seen a resource industry CEO fight back with such gumption and force in a public manner such as this. The most interesting revelation in the piece is when he reveals Greenpeace's latest legal filing in the case, where Greenpeace basically copped to knowingly lying about Resolute, admitting their statements about Resolute being, quote, forest destroyers was just, quote, hyperbole, heated rhetoric, and non-verifiable statements of a subjective opinion, unquote. Greenpeace eventually admits as well that no forest loss occurred despite their claims. That's quite the admission from Greenpeace, an admission that what they do is not based on truths, facts, or science, but simply to elicit an emotional response. I personally feel the same can be said about so many other environmental groups operating with a similar model to Greenpeace. But there is a bigger lesson in this saga between Greenpeace and Resolute Forest Products, and it's one I hope every single CEO of oil sands companies, forestry companies, or mining companies takes note of here in Canada. You don't need to capitulate or stay silent in the face of baseless false attacks against your company by heavily funded and organized environmental groups that will never compromise, never admit when your company does indeed protect the environment. And the reason this is so important is because lately we've seen the opposite behavior here in Canada from our big four oil sands companies. CNRL, Suncor, Shell, and Cenovus have all cut sweetheart deals with the Alberta government and submitted themselves, almost without a fight, to the will of the activist-led Alberta NDP, but also the activists on the oil sands advisory group like Sephora Berman, who spent decades working for the environmental groups who so badly want to shut down our oil sands. And while those big four may have covered themselves, they did it all while throwing the junior and mid-sized oil and gas companies firmly under the bus, instead of fighting back against the pressure. They just gave in. Resolute and their CEO Richard Garneau are heroes to the resource industry and those who support their work. Both the cases in Ontario and Georgia are still being heard, but I am cautiously optimistic that given the recent filings and admissions from Greenpeace, that Resolute should be in for a big victory. One that will hopefully inspire others to fight back as well. For the Rebel.media, I'm Christopher Wilson. Thanks for watching. I keep a close eye on the battle between industry and environmental groups, so keep it locked on the Rebel.media so you never miss an update.